What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video we're doing something a little bit different. On this channel I've predominantly talked about movies, but every here and there I've thrown in something else, and that's part of why I keep the channel just my name, so I have the freedom to just do anything I want to do. And today we're actually going to be talking about a stage play, a Broadway musical that I got to check out when I was in New York City this previous week. As of filming it, it's currently Monday, June 19th, and I actually saw this on June 16th on Friday over there in New York City. If you watched my recent video for The Flash, you know that I was celebrating my 30th birthday over in New York City with my family. I got to see The Flash out there, did my review out there in the hotel room, but I'm back home and I've been wanting to let this musical marinate with me a little bit before I got on camera again. I also wanted to wait till I got home and I was a little bit more rested to talk about it, because it was one of those things where you take a vacation and you need a vacation from the vacation. But here we are now, a few days after having seen the performance, and yeah, I wanted to talk about Sweeney Todd and the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, the current run happening with Josh Groban in the title role. We're going to talk a little bit about the cast, and before we get too far into my thoughts on the actual performance itself, I just want to kind of set the stage, if you will, for my thoughts on this and kind of where I kind of have a background a little bit when it comes to enjoying musicals and plays, anything like that. So of course you guys know I love movies, so I obviously love storytelling, and I think that that definitely translates to my enjoyment of something like a stage play. Now when I was younger, things like stage plays were stuff that I tend to kind of brush off as boring, as movies and music were without a doubt the things that I found myself diving into the most when it came to art. However, as a kid, my mom would take me to various art shows, whether it be like actual painters art, whether it was like a touring kind of art exhibit of like a famous painter, or just some sort of random art show or festival. And along with those things, a lot of times were various stage plays, sometimes for big things like Les Mis or things like Wicked, but a lot of times also for just smaller plays. And I was also involved in a couple of stage plays throughout the course of my high school years and middle school years back when I was going to school. And so yeah, all these years later, I've just grown an appreciation for stage plays. I think as somebody who loves entertainment in general, whether it be music or just, you know, movies or TV shows or stage plays, it's something that I can definitely have an admiration for, and something I definitely look to and think, wow, that's a pretty incredible art form that's definitely different. And I don't really go and see a whole lot of stage plays these days, but after having seen this one, I felt inspired to sit down and talk a little bit about it. So yeah, you know, I definitely have history with various forms of art, a lot of it thanks to my mom, who put a lot of this in front of me as a kid. And even though I didn't fully appreciate it when I was super young, nowadays I definitely really enjoy a lot of this. And so Sweeney Todd is a special one for me because it was actually a play that I had heard of but wasn't fully introduced to it until I saw the movie, directed by Tim Burton and starring of course people like Johnny Depp as well as Helena Bonham Carter and many more. And so I actually really fell in love with that movie back when it originally came out, and after having seen it the first time, I ended up getting it on DVD at the time. I got the soundtrack as well, and I would play that thing on repeat, back and forth like there was no tomorrow. I would play it all the time, whether it was the DVD or just the soundtrack itself. I became very, very knowledgeable on just that iteration of the story. I know the entire script for the most part, and overall that is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, live action musicals for movies. And so of course, as I started to grow appreciation for that film and that iteration of the story, I started to dive deeper into watching some videos online that I could find of full performances or clips from the various iterations of this play that has existed on stage, seeing the ways that they would portray this world on stage in various different ways, a lot of really cool stagecraft that would go into making the story what it is. And yeah, you know, it was something I always wanted to eventually be able to see on stage in person. And then they announced not too long ago, or you know, a little bit over a year ago, almost 2 years ago I would say now, that they were going to be bringing Sweeney Todd back to Broadway. Josh Groban was going to be the title role, and I was super excited for it, or at least the concept of it. But to be completely frank, with my current financial situation, I never thought that was going to be in the cards for me to go check out. So without further ado, let's get into my thoughts here, because I got to go see it thanks to my mom, who ended up getting us tickets when we were out there in New York City celebrating my birthday. So yeah, Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, the 2023 run with Josh Groban in the title role. I had a great time. I really enjoyed it. And one thing that I really enjoyed as I started to dive deeper into Sweeney Todd after having seen the film and falling in love with that iteration of the story and the soundtrack was that the movie was an abridged version of the stage play, which probably doesn't surprise a lot of people because, of course, movies have to have a little bit more of a tight-knit runtime and a lot of times have to kind of cut some fat here or there in order to make it a tighter narrative. And at times I think it works in the favor of the movie. I think there are elements that the movie does really well that I enjoy far more than the stage plays does, various versions that I've seen and this version that I saw. But there's also things that the play does that expands upon context and a lot of characters far more than the movie ever did. And so yeah, that's not going to be something I'm talking about here in terms of comparisons of each individual thing, but I did want to mention that I like that the two iterations are different in their own way, and I'm glad that going into this, even though I knew that this was gonna have more than the movie did because it's a longer experience and you have the intermission and all that, I'm glad going into this that I was able to kind of get some added context to some of these characters at times. Even though I had seen videos online, being able to experience it in person, it was kind of like experiencing a story that I'm incredibly familiar with a lot of new elements that I wasn't super familiar with. And after having seen the play, I had a great time. I thought the cast was phenomenal. We're gonna get into the individual cast members and what I enjoyed and what I didn't enjoy, but overall I had a really great time. We got to see this at the Lunt-Fontanne, I believe that's how you pronounce the theater that it was performed at. And yeah, the stage was really nice. I really enjoyed all the stagecraft that went into it. The costume designs were great. The vocal performances from everybody was top notch. I was really excited to see Josh Groban because he's somebody that I've been a fan of since I was very young. I mentioned my mom earlier, but she introduced me to Josh Groban as well. She used to play his first album around our apartment when I was a kid all the time, and I have a very distinctive memory of playing Kingdom Hearts, the original game, countless times while listening to Josh Groban in the background, as my mom always had it playing when she was cleaning or different things like that. So a lot of times now when I hear Josh Groban or when I play Kingdom Hearts, I think of the other. So this was kind of a 2-for-1 for me because I got to see essentially a Josh Groban concert in a way. Obviously he's not performing his own music, but also getting to see Sweeney Todd. And so yeah, he was fantastic. Let's just start off the top. Josh Groban, fantastic in the role as Sweeney Todd. Of course, he's got an absolutely immaculate voice. Anybody who's familiar with Josh Groban knows he has this incredibly dramatic and operatic voice that really fits the stage. And when it comes to a performance like this that has a lot of gravitas to the character, I thought he brought a lot to it. The performance is definitely a lot different than the version that I watched the most, which is the Johnny Depp version that has a different kind of nuance that's needed for on-screen acting. But he brought a humor far more to the stage that I really enjoyed and kind of gave a different flair to the Sweeney Todd character. And yeah, I was just really impressed finally being able to see Josh Groban live in some capacity. I thought his voice was absolutely immaculate, everything I expected it was going to be, and I had a really great time just watching him do his thing. The other main character in this whole story is Mrs. Lovitz, who's played by Anna Lee Ashburn, and I thought she was fantastic. And she's somebody who's got a tenured career when it comes to Broadway plays and just plays in general. But to be completely honest, she's not somebody I'm overly familiar with myself. So after having been able to see the play, I thought she was fantastic. She had so much great humor, and I really enjoyed her iteration of Mrs. Lovitz, arguably maybe my favorite iteration of the character that I've seen. She was able to play that weird, zany, creepy character at times while also really bringing a lot of humor and a lovable nature to who she was that kept everybody engaged. The audience around me was laughing quite a bit. But yeah, I thought she was fantastic in the role. Really thoroughly enjoyed the humor she brought to it, the cutesiness she brought to it, but also the wickedness that she was able to bring to it at times. I think for the most part, she completely knew what this character was and captured it perfectly, and I had a blast with it. Then the character of Anthony Hope was actually played by Jordan Fisher, and I didn't know that he was in this play until I was about to start watching it. And Jordan Fisher is actually from The Flash. He plays a character there, and when I saw him there, I wasn't super impressed with him on the show, but also, to be fair, the CW DC shows have slowly lost me over the course of years, mainly just because I feel like they don't have the best writing a lot of times. But honestly, when it comes down to this play, this was like the perfect palate cleanser in my opinion, because I got to experience Jordan Fisher almost in a brand new way and almost for the first time. Getting to see him there in person do his thing here on Broadway, I thought was phenomenal. He had so much gravitas to his performance, and overall it just brought a lot of nuance to it, while also having a fantastic voice. I was really into his iteration of Anthony, and I would argue this is probably my favorite iteration of Anthony that I've seen, based on, again, videos I've seen of previous performances of other stage play iterations of Sweeney Todd, as well as the movie version. I thought that Jordan Fisher was arguably my favorite version of this character. He brought a lot to it that I thought was really lovable and likable, and you were rooting for this iteration of the character far more than I feel like previous iterations. He didn't have any creep factor to him. He just seemed like a man in love, and I think that he captured that really well, and I really loved his voice. You know, I didn't know he could sing, again, because I'd only really seen him in The Flash, and so being able to see him here, I was really impressed with the performance he gave. Now, of course, we mentioned Anthony, who was played by Jordan Fisher, but the love interest of him in this film is Joanna, played by Maria Bilbao. At least that's how I think you pronounce her name, and I thought she was great as well. She really much fit the character, had that great operatic voice that is needed, and I was able to really buy into the cutesy love between her and Anthony over the course of the play, that I think that her and Jordan Fisher had fantastic chemistry throughout the course of the play, and I just really thoroughly enjoyed her as well. And then one of the biggest surprises for me was going to this and finding out that Gaten Matarazzo, of course, of Stranger Things fame, was in this play as well. So being able to see somebody who I've watched countless hours of on TV in person doing his Broadway thing was pretty amazing, because of course I think a lot of us know at this point that he has started in the stage world when it comes to a lot of his career, and there are plenty of videos you can find of him as a much younger, cuter iteration of who he is, doing these incredible things on Broadway and singing and having this angelic voice. So to be able to actually see him in person and doing his thing, I thought was pretty awesome. He had a great voice. He played the character of Toby, who of course, you know, ends up kind of working underneath Sweeney Todd and Mrs. Lovett over the course of the story, and eventually has a bit of a loving, motherly kind of attachment to Mrs. Lovett. You know, he really grows to fond of her character quite a bit. And while I don't necessarily love everything they do with his character in the stage iteration, I found that he was great. It's very familiar to the other iterations we've seen, but I really enjoyed Gaten Matarazzo in the role. I thought his voice was phenomenal, being able to hear it there in person. And I think that's just a common thing I'll say across the board. I don't really think there was a moment where I thought, oh, that person didn't sing super well. Everybody was really on top of it when it came to this performance, and Gaten Matarazzo was no different at all. Then you have Jamie Jackson playing Judge Turpin, and I thought he was okay. I'm not gonna lie. I thought that he played the part well. He had a good voice. There was nothing about it that I didn't enjoy, but he just kind of felt like anybody could have played that role, to be completely honest. Any talented older gentleman that can play creepy in some way. He was fine, and maybe my mind is just kind of comparing him to Alan Rickman, but quite frankly, I just found that his iteration of the character was enjoyable. It served its purpose, but it just was the one that I maybe walked away from thinking anybody could have played that version, because there was nothing about this iteration of the character that felt substantial. But on the flip side, you have John Rapson playing Beetle Bamford, who I thought was really great in the role and is arguably the best version that I've seen of the various videos I've seen, the movie and all that jazz. He brought a very great light humor to the character, while also being this sidekick that you want to get up there and slap him. You know, he's a sidekick to the judge, and he's really frustrating at times in the narrative, but I thought he did a great job when it came to the vocals and the humor, and kind of just being that a nuisance character that's also entertaining to watch. Overall, I thought he really captured that character very well, and I thoroughly enjoyed his voice, and there were so many times in the play that he was probably one of the people that made me laugh the most. And then I have to talk about Nicholas Christopher, who plays Pirelli. I really enjoyed him in this role. He brought the flamboyant, over-the-top nature that the character needs in order for you to be able to laugh with the character, but also have the great moment where he reveals that the character he's kind of putting on for people around him is fake. I really enjoyed his iteration of the character. It was exactly what I was hoping it would be, and it was big and bombastic and exciting to watch and silly, and definitely brought a lot of laughs from the crowd. And those are the main cast members that I really just specifically wanted to talk on. There are some other cast members, of course, that are a part of this, and just overall, as far as the ensemble, I just want to give everybody their roses, you know, give everybody their flowers, give everybody their praise. I thought that the cast overall, the ensemble, was great. I had a great time at the theater with my family. I was really engulfed in what was going on. There was a short 15-minute intermission. I stayed seated throughout all of that, and I never felt bored while watching the play. I genuinely found myself really engrossed in what was going on, and I was just I was just so happy to be there and being able to see this play in person, because it's something that, you know, there may be different iterations of this play as time goes on, but being able to see this cast doing it the way that they did it on the stage that they did it on, I thought really just made it a unique experience, and I just had a really good time being able to experience it. Again, I wasn't ever really bored throughout the play, which is something I'm really happy to say, because I have seen other plays, whether they be traveling plays or whatever the case may be, in the past that have had me with heavy eyes. I'm not gonna lie. Les Mis, which is one of the most popular, you know, Broadway plays, and one of the most popular plays of all time. I saw a traveling show of it one time in South Florida, and I won't lie, I fell asleep throughout it. And while I was able to be really impressed by a lot of the, you know, set design and costume design and the overall, you know, talent on stage, I just found that the play was a little bit boring, if I'm completely honest. And so in the case of this one, I never found myself bored at all, and I was just genuinely locked in from beginning to end. So I just have to give kudos to everybody who was involved in making this happen. The composer, all the musicians that brought the music to life, the stage hands, the people on stage, the performers, whatever the case may be, and of course the director, Thomas Kail, who I think, you know, obviously you can see all the hard work that he put into it with the cast and with everybody else. I think it was definitely a good time. Now, if I had to lean into some of my gripes, because there are a couple here and there, I would say that there's a couple of moments of humor and some jokes that are reprised over the course of it that made some people in the audience laugh for sure, but oftentimes made me feel kind of like, that feels like a bit of a tired joke or wasn't all that funny. There were a couple of moments where the humor didn't really land all that much for me. Based on some of the laughs around me, though, I could say that maybe I'm one of the only ones that felt that way, but I felt like it was at least worth mentioning. And then the character of Toby, for me, played by Gaten Matarazzo, I thought he was great. Really enjoyed his performance throughout the whole course of it. And I, again, am more kind of attuned to the version that the movie does, and I really enjoy the motivation that the movie iteration of Toby has in the end to kill Sweeney Todd and to, you know, kind of get revenge because of what's happened with Mrs. Lovett. And in the version that I went to go see on stage, you know, he kind of goes a little bit crazy near the end. He gets a little bit loony near the end, and I didn't really fully understand why. I think while the play does add some context to elements that I don't think that the movie does as much, there were a couple of moments that I felt like my knowledge of the movie at least added some context where I felt the stage play didn't. And one of those things for me was Toby kind of losing his mind a little bit near the end. It never really felt like he was motivated to kill Sweeney Todd specifically because of the fact that, you know, of what happens with Mrs. Lovett and Sweeney Todd near the end. It felt far more like it just kind of randomly happened, and me and my fiance both felt the same way, which was probably one of the biggest gripes I had with it. But as you can tell, I really enjoyed myself overall. I found it to be very well performed. The vocal performances were great. The acting was great. There was a lot of fun, levity throughout the course of the performance. The musical performances from the orchestra that was there as well was fantastic. Obviously, there was a lot of work that went into the costume design, the set design, and making sure that it all runs smoothly and there was never really a hiccup. And overall, I was very happy to check this out. So a big thanks to you guys for watching. And I just wanted to sit here and ramble a little bit about something a little bit different on the channel. I usually talk about movies, and there's plenty more movie reviews to come, but overall this was a really good fun time. I'm glad I got to check this out in person and experience a Broadway play on Broadway. I thought that was pretty awesome, being able to see Josh Groban and Anna Lee Ashburn and Gaten Matarazzo and Jordan Fisher. I thought everybody was really great, really enjoyed it. And one other thing I want to mention is that I feel like the stage play does a far better job of expanding upon the story and the love story specifically of Anthony and Joanna. Really thoroughly enjoyed their story, far more on stage than I think I have in any other iteration of the story that I've seen. And yeah, I'll go ahead and wrap this up. A big thanks to you guys for watching. Leave a comment and a like if you guys enjoyed this video, and let me know, did you guys check out this play as well? Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? Whatever the case may be, leave any and all comments down below, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next one. Bye-bye.